What's up? Hey, hello, everybody. We are here after the Survivor finale, suffering serious Survivor withdrawal. So, we're going to be talking about our first impressions video that me and Emily did a while back before the season started. So, in case you guys don't remember, this is my friend Emily. She and I met in college, and we both really enjoy Survivor, and so we geek out about it together. And so, one of the things we did before this season started was we took a bunch of non-Survivor fans and we asked them to rank who they thought was going to win this season of Survivor. And then we compiled a boot list based on all of their rankings. And so we had an entire video about that, and we'll put the link in the comments in case you missed that video. But now that this season is over, what we're going to do is analyze their boot list and see where they went right and wrong and why some people might have ended up in the spots that they ended up in. So, yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to be back. The podcast we did before was really exciting, and I had a good time. And my boot list was awful. I said before I had Andrea as my winner pick, but I also had Jeff Varner in the final tribal council, so that's how bad it was. I forgot about Jeff Varner, and then I had an extra spot. Okay. Honestly, I just kind of stuck him there.
My boot list was bad, but it wasn't that bad. So
I'm sorry. We don't have to talk about Jeff Varner at all, do we?
No, we can kind of skate over the whole Jeff Varner thing.
Yeah,
we've all had more than enough of that guy. Like
enough. Yeah. We didn't have to. I mean, we had to talk about it at the reunion, I guess, but like we didn't have to spend as much time as we did, and we definitely did not have to hear about his book deal.
Yeah.
No one cares. No one's gonna read his book.
That is so true. So in our first impressions boot list that we had, the first person who got voted out was Andrea. And obviously that's not what really happened. In reality, Sierra was the first person who got voted out. And so one thing that I thought was really interesting about like both of these first boots was that they were both young, pretty, athletic girls. And so like to me, Rachel and I have talked a little bit. We have a gender bias in Survivor video, and I guess I can also plop that link down in the thingy thing. But we talked a lot about how there's some gender bias in Survivor in casting and also in like winning the game and stuff, and how perceptions of women can change how they do on Survivor. And I thought it was really interesting that like the person that people thought was going to lose at Survivor was just a pretty girl.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting as well. I also think that if you look at the strategic games of Andrea and Sierra, they're almost a little bit similar in that they just end up talking to a lot of people and pushing big moves on a lot of people and are always the one bringing up names. And that, while it may work like towards the end of the game, it doesn't work early. I think everyone in Game Changers was just trying to find a way to push the target onto someone else. And by Sierra saying so many names early, I think it was Malcolm. I don't know. It was like 3 months ago, but I'm pretty sure it was Malcolm who said, like Sierra is the only one bringing up names. We don't really need this much like division in our tribe. So let's just get rid of her. And then we can try to stay stronger as a tribe. And I think I disagree a little bit with what you said as Andrea and Sierra. I'm going to mess up these names all night because they're so similar. Sierra is actually not super athletic. I've never thought of her as like good at challenges, whereas Andrea is good, really good at challenges. So Sierra is a little bit of a liability. She's always given the puzzles, but never excels on them.
Yeah. One thing I think also is a lot of people's perception of Survivor seems to be that like they don't really seem to think of it as a social game anymore, which I think is really interesting because they talk a lot about how like politicians have to be pretty people with iron wills. And I feel like that's also something that's really good for survivors. Like being someone who's pretty and also really smart is like a good thing for survivors to be. Like in Brains, Brawn, Beauty, Brains has not won. which I think is interesting, but both brawn and beauty have. And I feel like people overestimate brawn and brains in the game of Survivor when, like, sometimes just sitting back and chilling and, like, not getting in people's way is a really good strategy. And so I wonder if that's, like, a mistake that people make just, like, because of a lack of Survivor knowledge or because of, like, a general human thing where we assume that people who are pretty on the outside must be ugly on the inside. Because I feel like that's something that's also preached to us a lot in, like, childhood. Like, don't judge a book by a cover. Don't trust a stranger just because he gives you candy, type of thing.
I think I was gonna say something, and can you keep talking? I'm trying to remember what I was gonna say.
Sure, I love talking.
I remember now. So I actually took a listen this week to Sarah's podcast on RHAP, and she was talking a little bit about how you really need to be working the first 3 days of Survivor. And she said she had a relationship with every single person on her tribe, but she did it in a way that nobody knew that was happening. Whereas she said, obviously she wasn't on the same tribe as Sierra, but like Sierra was making it really obvious that she was talking to everybody. And I think that's something that you have to not come across as a schemer in the first 2 or 3 days, because if you do, then you'll immediately have a target on your back.
It's a really delicate balance to pull, I think, which is why, like, people who are good at the game are good at the game because they, like, have sort of a feel for that balance, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then,
so I guess, like, we probably already talked about how they thought Andrea was going to be the first boot. She ended up obviously doing a lot better. I feel justified. We were more right than the people who never watched Survivor before about Andrea, because I know you had her as your winner pick too, right?
Yeah, and so did Rachel.
So many people had her as winner pick, so many fans. And I feel like I should have picked someone else now, but she did a good job. She made me proud as a winner pick. I've definitely done worse. I picked Liz for co-wrong, and that is definitely not one of my proudest moments.
I picked Mari, so yeah. Also not a proud
I remember when Mari got voted out because I was watching with you.
Yeah, that was oof. But anyways, next on our first impressions boot list was Sierra Dawn Thomas. And I thought that was interesting because, like, some people, as they were filling these out, said to me, these two girls look the same. And I'm like, anyone with eyes can see that Sierra Dawn Thomas and Andrea Belke, I know how to pronounce her last name now. I'm so proud of myself. But
I'm so proud.
That those two people have nothing in common other than being blonde women. And I'm like, guys. But then they put them both, like, in low positions. And I'm like, what are you doing?
Okay. So I actually see why some people, like, I don't think the similarities that I see between Sierra and Andrea are the same ones that they see, but I definitely, they're both from, Andrea's from Wisconsin. They're both from more rural backgrounds, although Andrea lives in the city now, obviously, and does work with people.com. She was kind of a farm girl. That's how she was portrayed on her first season. Obviously, Sierra Dawn Thomas, very much a farm girl, and still portrayed as a farm girl. They both kind of play a social game. Like, I do see the similarities to the point where I think preseason I called Sierra Discount Andrea at one point.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've really changed my opinion. She impressed me. She did a good job, but yeah, she's just not going to ever be a character. She's going to be a good player. I think she has potential to win it if she were to come back. I don't want to see her back. I don't need to, but I think she's always going to have the potential to win because I've heard that she is such a great social game.
Yeah. And I think that part of it was everyone knew that Sierra was, like, the smart one in her alliance. And so I feel like part of the reason she got out when she did was because she was seen as, like, a threat. And that's, like, obviously a good thing. And the reason people are voted off generally. But I thought it was interesting that, like, if she had managed to paint Brad as the one with all of the ideas, obviously she might have had a little more work at the final tribal council, but she could have possibly gotten there.
Yeah, I think she would have beat Brad if they had made it to the end easily, because I don't think Brad had relationships with people he wasn't working with. I think he probably had a little bit. I know he had one with Sari, where they bonded about like making it to the family visit. But yeah, I wonder if people are intimidated by Sierra Dawn Thomas because she's like super, super, super tall.
Yeah, it could just be like a
I'm intimidated by tall
subconscious thing.
people sometimes. Like I'm decently short. I'm like 5'4". So
yeah. But again, Sierra Dawn Thomas did a lot better, like in actuality, than our fake boot list had her doing. So I think again, kind of bias.
yeah, and I didn't have her super high on my boot list, but that was another case of I don't know. She happened. Nobody, yeah. There's a reason nobody knew what to think about her preseason.
Yeah.
And it's because Worlds Apart was I don't like Worlds Apart. I mean, I think that's not a super unpopular opinion, but I think it was probably the worst season of I guess probably since like not counting Caramone, because Caramone wasn't a great season. But it's probably the second worst of like from 25 on.
Yeah, I feel like yeah.
I don't like it.
And
I don't like Mike and I don't like Joe. I like Carolyn, but like Carolyn wasn't there because Mike got all the screen time and Mike annoys me.
I think it was just really interesting because like Sierra Dawn Thomas didn't come on Game Changers as a game changer. And I don't think she left Game Changers as a game changer either. But like I thought it was interesting that the season where she made a name for herself was the season that she should have come onto with already having a big name.
Yeah, and I don't think she even made that much of a name for herself this season. I think she played a very respectable game. Obviously, she didn't make it that far, and I think if she had made it far, we would have seen a lot more of her game, and like it would have been more impressive. So I'm not mad that much about the casting choice. We'll get to some other ones which I was infuriated after post game that I'm even more angry about than I was pre-game. But in fact, I think we're headed for one next.
Yeah. So this was one of the ones that our fake boot list, our first impressions boot list, actually got correct, and it was
so did I. I got it right on my boot list too.
Yeah, it was putting Caleb as third boot, which I thought was a really interesting choice, just because the other like bigger, beefier guys like Tony and Brad were like way up top, but then Caleb. I'm not sure if it was like the picture that was used or whatever.
Yeah,
but
we used a different picture, didn't we?
Yeah, because of the rules that I used when I like searched for pictures of them, I used really complicated rules when I was finding pictures. But like the picture and just like people's impressions of him, they were like, he looks like a douche and I don't think anyone will like him. And I was like, I mean, not wrong. But I thought it was interesting too because Caleb and Ty weren't together to start with. And that was like one of the things where like people wanted to see Caleb and Ty back together again.
Look at how well that worked out.
Mm-hmm.
I am so mad. Why did we have to bring Caleb back? Like I said, he literally did nothing his first season. He did nothing this season. Like, why? We could have had Hayden Moss. Okay. This is I'm annoyed that they never brought Hayden back, but I think he would have done well here. He would have fit the same like archetype. Heck, they were both on Big Brother. I didn't think of that initially, but like they're literally the same character type. Hayden, I feel like, has a really strong case to actually be a game changer because he helped force that rock draw. It was like the first rock draw in 23 seasons or whatever.
Yeah, and I think it's just.
But I don't like Caleb.
I think they wanted to give Caleb a second chance because he got evacuated before he could really do anything. But I feel like this was the wrong time to bring him back. Like,
yeah,
if you're gonna choose a title like Game Changers, and I feel like part of the reason like this season kind of flopped was because like the title brought about expectations that weren't realistic. But like, if you're going to title something Game Changers, I feel like it needs to be people who are actually like have done something.
Yeah.
Like, literally anything.
Like, Caleb never went to tribal council. I don't think he ever made an alliance. I don't remember what he didn't go wrong, but that's probably for good reason.
Yeah.
I think he would have done fine if they had waited a couple more seasons and done like a Philippine style thing again. Like, he probably still wouldn't have done well, but like it would have made more sense.
Same.
Yeah, I really don't like Caleb, and I'm really, really, really angry that like preseason I think everybody was mad about Sierra and Haley, and I was like I was mad about them, but I was always a little bit more angry about Caleb because I think they just wanted to push him back on the first season they possibly could just so people remembered who he was. And CBS has a weird obsession with him because like he was on Big Brother first.
Yeah.
Whatever. I don't care.
So I don't think that Caleb will be someone that they bring back for a third time playing.
I would hope not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who's next?
So next on our first impressions boot list is my bae, Aubrey.
No! Oh my gosh. No, Aubrey is my bae. Andrea is your bae.
No, Aubrey was my bae first. Okay.
What the heck? No.
No. Aubrey's bae. But
yeah, agreed. I love Aubrey. I'm so proud of her. She did, even though she was always on the bottom, she did such a good job. I just really, really love Aubrey as a Survivor character.
I think Aubrey's really interesting because like both times she like did really well in the game, but it's just like circumstances kept screwing her over. And like we've talked about her hilarious thing on the Twitter where like all of her allies get voted off. So if you ever go on Survivor, don't get an alliance with Aubrey. And I think this is interesting.
I would do it anyway.
Yeah, so would I. I think this is interesting just because I talked about this when we first did the first impressions boot list, I think, but like a lot of the people that they think will go down early are girls. And it's like Aubrey doesn't like look like a super pretty girl. She doesn't look like a super athletic girl. So I'm not sure how people justified putting Aubrey down lower on the boot list if they think that pretty people are threatening and like strong people are threatening. Because like
I think that it might have something to do with the glasses and how she just doesn't look like she fits on a show called Survivor. Like she looks very much like she doesn't belong on an island. Like I know once she starts playing, you understand differently. And like, but once she starts playing, she doesn't wear the glasses. The glasses go like almost instantly. Both seasons. And so she I don't know what I was trying to say, but yeah, I think maybe like that nerd impression and looking at a show called Survivor, most people have like a little bit of a notion of what the show is. Obviously they don't know a ton, especially the people we talk to, but if you hear the word Survivor, you're going to want to pick like a big buff guy, not this girl with glasses and like frizzy curly hair who is awesome but isn't the person you'd choose if you had to survive on a desert island.
Yeah. And again, Aubrey did a lot better than people thought she was going to do. And I think that's a trend for like most of the first half, actually.
I think Aubrey did a lot better than I thought she was going to do.
I had total faith in her.
I wish I had faith in her. I think I had her like in the middle of the merge. I thought I wanted her to do well really, really badly, and I'm really happy she made it so far. Because like she's probably my favorite player of the past, like new player of the past 3 or 4 seasons. But yeah, she was always playing from the bottom, and she never got a ton of screen time, which is tragic. But she took out Debbie again, which was the most glorious thing I have ever seen.
Yeah, I just like Aubrey taking out Debbie twice was like #worth it. But yeah. Next person on our first impressions boot list was Haley. And again, with the pretty girls getting voted out early, like, what up with that?
I don't know. Haley is the other one I thought was a complete and utter waste.
Oh, did we say who actually got voted out in fourth boot? Because that was Malcolm. R.I.P.
No, I was home because it was spring break week that week, right? So we weren't watching together.
I don't know.
And I was so shook. It was so bad. I was convinced they were going to vote for Sandra, and I was fine with that because, like, Sandra is great, but she wasn't going to make it far. Malcolm was, like, really, really positioned well, but we don't have to talk about that now.
Yeah. We'll talk about him when we get to him, but he was the one who actually went home in the position where people thought that Aubrey was going to go home. Anyways, next up, Haley.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
you were saying that you thought she was like a waste of a position.
Because I don't think we saw anything from her that we didn't see in Worlds Apart.
I think that Haley was really scrappy, and part of it was like other people were unwilling to work with her because she wasn't like a game changer, I feel like. So
I think the real issue was that she was swapped onto that tribe where the only other person she had was Caleb, and it was Brad and Sierra and Debbie who always, they seem like people who are always going to stick with their alliance no matter what, and she really didn't have anybody to work with at that point. And even like there was that weird situation with the combined tribal, and like she did have a couple good sound bites, I guess. She was the reason Debbie flipped out, so that was fun. I love that episode. That was probably my favorite episode of the season, if not the one where Debbie goes home.
yeah.
I just don't think, like, I don't know who I would have brought back in her place. Off the top of my head, like there was with Caleb, there's someone like that comes to the top of my head immediately. I guess everyone always wants Natalie Bolton back. She could have filled that spot. I'm not crazy about Natalie Bolton, but like Reddit is.
Yeah, I feel like one of the things is like with the season of Game Changers, it's hard to find and think of people who like legitimately changed the game. Like you can have people who made like super great moves or whatever, but like being able to say, oh, this person changed the entire course of the history of Survivor is a little bit difficult.
There's really not, they didn't bring back any of the people who did that. I mean, Suri is probably the only one.
Sandra changed the game by being the first person to win twice.
Yeah, Sandra too. Yeah, but they didn't have enough people from old seasons. Like, if you're going to bring back Game Changers, nothing about the game has really changed.
Hashtag recency bias, am I right, guys?
Also, I mean, it's the hashtag big moves era. I don't know who started that. People attribute that to Malcolm, I guess?
I think people attribute it to Sierra Easton in...
Blood versus Water?
No, the other one. What's the word?
Cambodia?
Second chances. There we go.
Chance. There we go. I don't know. Maybe that's when like the hashtag big moves started, but Malcolm was always doing like big and flashy things and like pulling idols out of tribal councils. And I think since then we had the Sierra voting out her mom, which was apparently a big move. Like it really wasn't, but whatever.
Yeah. But she oh, I'm so done, and I'm so glad that I'm never gonna hear one more person say Sierra Easton voted out her mom.
I mean, are you so sure about that? The Survivor loves Sierra Easton. She's gonna come back.
I don't think she can come back unless they do like a heroes versus villains for like 40 or something.
I don't think she can. She better not come back in the next 3 years. I don't want to see her again until at least 2020.
I would not be so sure about that.
She's come back. She's played 3 times in 7 seasons. You know that, right?
Yes, I know how to count.
But Amanda and James also played 3 times in 7 seasons, and honestly, I think so did Parvati. So, like, it's not as uncommon as you'd think. But it's just also not like, worth Sierra Easton.
Yeah. Mm.
Like Kelly Wentworth over Sierra Easton literally all the time.
I love Kelly Wentworth, and I'm really upset. She could have been a game changer.
But the issue was she didn't want to. I think she was asked. I don't know. There's all these rumors about who was asked, but I would have been fine with Kelly Wentworth.
Yeah. Anyways, the person who actually went home in that slot was JT. So again, you're seeing like the people that the first impressions people thought were going to like go very far, like the big bulky people. Those are the guys who got voted out first.
Yeah. And I think honestly, it's because the people who've never watched the show put more emphasis on like the physicality of Survivor when it's really gone away from that and it's become way more strategic and way more of a social game. And that's why people like Andrea and Sierra Dawn Thomas and Aubrey can do so well.
But that's also why people like Ozzy, I feel like, fail, because Ozzy, I think, is still caught in the mentality of like, oh, physicality is everything. Oh, surviving and providing for people is everything. And so,
definitely.
Yeah.
Ozzy is not evolving as a character at all. But we can get to that later. Who's next?
Next person is Jeff Varner. So this was one of the ones that they got pretty close, where Jeff went home one vote after they thought he was going to go home. But yeah, I feel like the reason.
Wait a second. Oh no, I thought I saw Sandra there. Never mind.
No, the one on the right is the column of the people who actually went home. But I thought it was really interesting because they judged Jeff, I feel like, to be not very physically intimidating.
They weren't wrong.
Yeah, they weren't wrong. He did a lot better this season, I feel like, than he did in Second Chances, but still.
I'm sorry. I'm just thinking about how Malcolm wouldn't have gotten voted out if Jeff Varner hadn't blown that table maze.
Listen, we have a lot of reasons to hate Jeff Varner, and I feel like talking about him is just going to end up with everyone upset. So let's just say Jeff looks like a kind of pudgy, kind of nerdy guy, and he went home for that. Well,
yeah, and I mean, that's
he was going to go home.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone could have predicted what actually happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like you guys have. I didn't like actually watch your podcast when you talked about that, but I feel like you guys. What?
Burn. My best friend never watches my podcast, guys. The truth comes out.
I watched some of it. I watched some of your podcasts in the off season, and I always watch your challenge videos because those are funny.
Yeah, guys, watch challenge videos.
But I don't have time to listen to your podcast. I'm a busy college student.
Sure. Anyways, the next person on the first impressions boot list is Debbie, which I thought was interesting because, like, of the returning females, I feel like Debbie was one of the ones who, like, obviously she wasn't in the best physical shape, but she wasn't, like, in bad shape either. And I feel like part of the reason why people, like, went against her was because she looks kind of older. And, like, they think that old people won't be able to make it on the island, so.
Surprise. Old people can do okay sometimes.
Getting it done is 71, am I right?
I forgot about him. I was thinking about Bob.
Yeah.
But of course, how can we forget Aubrey's number one?
Yeah. The number one who couldn't go number two. I'm so funny. But yeah. And again, another female of the, like, bottom 6 or bottom 7, 5 of them were chicks, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah. It is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah. Oh yeah, Sandra actually went home when they said Varner was going to go home. I don't know if we said that or not, but listening to this podcast, they have a decent handle of the boot order that actually happened.
Yeah. And then Jeff went where they thought that Debbie was going to go, which is, like I said, really similar to where they thought, but for like all the wrong reasons, because I don't think anyone ever anticipated Varner doing what he did. So
Yeah.
no one factored that into our boot list.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
I mean, what was I going to say about Debbie? Like, this season, Debbie did not change. She was entertaining. Her blow up at Brad was like really, really funny.
It was really funny, but also really uncomfortable.
It was a little bit uncomfortable, but I think I ended up just laughing more because she is such a character and just such a almost a cartoon of herself at this point that I just can't take her seriously. And
I think if I ever met her like in real life, I'd just like start pointing and laughing.
I think that I could not have taken her making the end. She would have been insufferable. And I'm really, really glad that Aubrey got Sarah to flip when she did.
Yeah.
Because that alliance, we've talked about this, but at that point, after Ozzy was voted out,
yeah,
what did I say? I said when the person in your alliance that I'm rooting for is Ty, then I know you've done something wrong.
Yeah, I feel like
Which
part of the reason I didn't enjoy the second half of the season is because there was no one really to root for.
Yeah, that's fair. There wasn't really there was Sarah was doing a good job. You can't deny that she did a good job and she played a really good game. Aubrey was always there, but she wasn't visible enough for me to really, really get attached to her, although obviously I was always attached to her. Suri was doing a good job, and I love Suri, but she's like larger than life at this point. So rooting for her just kind of always gonna happen regardless, so it's whatever. And then who else was there? Brad? No. Troyzan? Ew. Ty? I've never really rooted for Ty. I don't hate him, but whatever. Yeah, that alliance is awful. I'm really glad it imploded. At least somewhat.
Can you really say it imploded when two of its members made it to the final tribal though?
That's fair. Four of them were the final four. But I think I just needed those couple votes, like the Debbie vote and the Sierra vote. Those just needed to happen because I wasn't gonna watch a finale that was Ty, Debbie, Sierra, Brad, Sarah, and Troyzan. I mean, I was gonna watch it, obviously, but I wouldn't have enjoyed it. Yeah. If the boot list had then gone Andrea, Suri, Aubrey, Michaela, it just wouldn't have gone well.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of Suri, she's the next one off in our first impressions boot list. And I feel like the reason why is kind of obvious.
Because she's Suri. I'm surprised they didn't put, people didn't put her lower, because I know on first impression I wouldn't have had her super high at all either.
I feel like a lot of the reason is, they see beauty and stuff as a threat, but they don't really, think about the physical aspects.
But, they also do, because they always have the really buff guys. I think people like Suri just kind of fall to the middle.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of one of those things where, they see beauty first, and then once all the pretty people are gone, they start to think about the physical stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think there's really, much else to say about that, other than, Suri is, the couch potato survivor. So,
Suri is amazing. I love Suri. She did phenomenally. I know she would have been voted out if she had gone to tribal council pre-merge. I am so glad she didn't, because we needed at least one of the legends to actually do well. And if any of them had to do well, I'm super, super glad it was Suri who had a rough go in Heroes versus Villains. And she got a little bit of the redemption. And she got a lot of credit this game. Jeff really gave her a great send-off, because that was such a weird circumstance that she went home in.
Yeah. And I still think it's kind of interesting that the default vote off kind of thing. Like, at least in Second Chance, when they had that crazy tribal council, it was like,
there was only like 3 people immune in that case, right? It was only half
I don't
of
remember,
them.
but it was like
I think
they
it
were
was.
still 2 choices for who to go home.
Yeah, but I guess at that, I just think there shouldn't be that many advantages in the game at that point. That should never be able to happen. I think. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've ranted quite a bit about this, about how, like, one suggestion that I saw that was kind of interesting was uh like have every idol be kind of like a legacy advantage where you can only use it at certain tribal councils. And I thought that was an
But that,
interesting concept, but it also kind of defeats the purpose of having an idol.
yeah. I
So,
just don't think we need the legacy advantage.
yeah.
I think there should be at very, very most, 3 advantages that act like idols in the game at any time. And once we get to like 6 or like 7 or 8, they shouldn't be rehidden.
Yeah, I feel like part of it is since they had the 3 separate beaches plus the legacy advantage, it was like,
A lot.
yeah.
And also Ty was just finding idols right and left.
Yeah.
What did you think about the balance beam with Suri? Because I thought it was a little bit like it was a sweet moment, but it was really overdone, I think.
I think it was one of those things where if Suri had said, like, I want to keep trying, I would have been all for it. But, like, since Jeff was like, Suri, you want to keep trying? I was like, Jeff, honey, tone it down a little.
Yeah, we get it. We get it. Suri is great. We all love Suri. We would have loved her even if she hadn't walked across that balance beam.
Yeah.
I'm really sad. Suri's probably never coming back to Survivor. Like 4 times is enough for her, and I think she would go early if she came back again.
Yeah.
She's got to be on winning tribes.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. It's the sad, sad truth.
But then the person who went out when they said Suri was going to go out is Haley. And we already talked about Haley and, like, the reason she was a good player, a bad player. And, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the next person that they had on their boot list was Sarah. And once again, underestimating my chicks.
Just a little bit underestimating Sarah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, like, honestly, I cannot find a reason for her being this low.
She looks like someone who would be good at Survivor.
That's what I'm saying. Like, just looking at her. And then, like, when you look at the breakdown of, like, where people voted her, a lot of people put her in, like, the mid-range. But then there was one person who said she was going to be voted out 3rd. And that was kind of, like, what pulled her down, I feel like. And
yeah.
I just think, like, she looks like someone who's going to be good at Survivor, but, like, she kind of looks like not anything special, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
that
Tony and Brad are both these huge muscled tattoo guys. And, like, there's kind of, like, an unassuming Midwestern cop. And I feel like also there's nothing about her appearance that, like, screams cop. And we'll talk about this a little bit more when we get to Sandra, but Sandra was wearing a military hat in the photo of her that was used for this first impressions thing. And so people were like, oh, she's in the military. She's definitely going to do very well.
Yeah. I think what's interesting about Sarah is how many, like, super fans underestimated her coming in because they only thought about the mistakes she made. And I think that's really interesting about these players that haven't won is you have to see their mistakes because you have to see why they get voted out. So you see everything they do wrong, but you don't see a lot of what they did right. And I think obviously what Sarah did wrong was bad, and it was, like, obviously a good reason to get her voted out. But there was a lot of things she did right in Kagayan, and I think listening to her on Rob Has a Podcast, which I did, like I said, this week, gave me a greater appreciation of, like, what she did and also what she did in Kagayan, because apparently if she hadn't put her foot down, I think it was that she didn't want to vote out Trish, and that's how Cass kind of started to splinter. And I think if that hadn't splintered, she would have had a really good chance at winning Kagayan.
Yeah.
I don't think a jury, like, we who else was in that alliance? Like
I don't even
Tasha.
remember.
It was like Spencer and Tasha. We see what happens when Spencer and Tasha make it to the final tribal.
Well, they also made
The
it to
guy
the
was in
final
a different
tribal with
situation.
Jeremy, which
Yeah.
is,
But I
I feel
feel
like
like
Sarah
Sarah,
had one fatal flaw, and that's different from playing like a flawed game. Like
yeah.
making a flawed choice and having a flawed game are different because people who make a flawed choice can come back and win again, but people
Mhm.
who played a flawed game can't.
I think that's a big difference. I think if you contrast Sarah and someone like Debbie, I think Debbie's a good person who just has a flawed game. Who has
Yeah.
she's an overinflated sense of self and just doesn't really understand how to play the game strategically. And like she's okay strategically. Obviously, she's done some good things. Like when she voted Liz out, unfortunately, there went my winner pick. But also, like she did a good job. But she always gets overconfident, and I don't think she changed her game at all.
Yeah. And I
In the
feel
two
like people
seasons.
like Russell Hantz also played Russell Hantz, Amanda Kimmel,
Yeah.
like who get to the final and then lose.
Like two
Like,
times?
yeah, obviously you're doing something wrong if you make the same mistake twice.
Mm-hmm.
And like both of them I can have a little bit of leeway for since like they played back-to-back seasons so they couldn't see what they did wrong. But then like in Heroes versus Villains, Amanda did the same thing where like she tries to lie to people she's like obviously outclassed by.
She's
But
just I don't know. I haven't seen any of Amanda seasons in a really long time.
yeah.
I'd have to talk like what was I gonna say? I was gonna say something and like I guess we'll talk about Michaela later. I was gonna
Yeah.
say something about Michaela, but we can talk about her when we get to her.
Yeah. But again, underestimating people. And the next on the list was, which was another one I couldn't really figure out, was JT. And so what I was thinking about was like, this was the one time where I feel like people actually thought about the survivor strategy. And they said to me, JT looks too charming. And I was like, they were like, people are going to be threatened by his charm. And I was like, I mean, I guess I can see that.
Yeah, I
Kind
mean I
of.
think that's why he was voted out of Heroes versus Villains. I don't think it's why he was voted out here.
Yeah, but
I mean I know why he was voted out here.
I think it was interesting just because it was one of those things where I was like, okay, maybe you guys understand Survivor at least a little bit if you understand that people don't want to keep the really charming, nice people around. But at the same time, they couldn't really like
Figure that out. But like people I think we overestimate the let's not keep the charming people around. I think it is around like final 10 or final 9, even sometimes later where that becomes a factor, but like pre-merge, like all the charming people like last season, I don't know who I would have Jay was obviously had everyone under his spell at a certain point. Um David I guess was kind of charming. I don't know. David was great. David should have come back. I know he wasn't never going to play back seasons. It would have been bad for his health. But I can't
yeah,
wait
he
to see him
was
come
so
back someday.
skinny. But one of the things is I feel like the point where people start voting out like the challenge threats and the charming people, like the challenge threats and the social threats, is like earlier and earlier. Like we saw like
Mm-hmm.
all of the big beefy guys got voted out super early, and it used to be like you start voting them out like close to merge time when you don't need them to win challenges anymore.
Yeah,
So
I think that's interesting.
I think that's an interesting thing where it shows like the direction that the game is moving, where like it's definitely becoming more of a cerebral thing and less of
Yeah,
like
and
win everything and get to the end that way.
I think if you think about it, that's why we've had Aubrey do really well. We had Adam and Hannah both do really well, and David. We had like Spencer and Jeremy. Not I mean not as much Jeremy, but like Spencer and Kelly are both more cerebral players. Um, I think it's just trending towards strategy,
Yeah. And
and
then
whereas
one
some of the
thing,
seasons definitely didn't.
One thing to point out is JT was the first person on this first impressions boot list that they put higher up than he actually placed. So
that's really interesting. But
yeah.
JT was also put in a really, really unfortunate situation in the game, and he made that even more unfortunate by telling Brad who to play the idol on.
Disinherited.
Not salty at all.
Yeah.
That's a lie. I'm really, really salty.
And then Debbie went out when they thought JT was going to go out. So next on this first impressions list was Troyzan, which I thought was really interesting because, like, he doesn't look like someone who's good at the game, but he doesn't look like someone who's not. And I feel like Troyzan's lot in this first impressions boot list was the same as it was in this game, where like people kind of forgot about him until they like kind of got nearest to the end, and then they were like, "Oh, what am I supposed to do with Troyzan?"
But yeah, everyone. But he just kind of looks like a jungle. Like, he has the long hair. He looks like he belongs in the jungle. His name is. They didn't obviously see the names, but his name is. He calls himself Troyzan.
I thought it was really interesting too because one person put him in second place and one person put him in 20th. So it's
I put him in 20th, but I've seen him play before and I don't like him.
Yeah, there was a lot of disagreement as to where Troyzan like would fall, I feel like. And I feel like that's just because like you see him with like his like really long scraggly hair and like he's smiling in the picture and he just looks like a good guy and you're kind of like, what am I supposed to make of this?
I mean, I think he is kind of a good guy. Like, I think he's probably really great, and I do feel bad about he got such a raw deal. Like, making it to the end of Survivor as a super fan is probably really, really impressive, and to just get ignored like he did at Final Tribal must be so devastating. And he was good about it. He was self-aware enough to understand how it was going.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Like, I think he did a lot more than we saw.
Yeah.
And I think he probably played really, really subtly, and I think that's why we didn't see it, is because we obviously saw Sarah going back and forth and controlling basically every vote. And Brad won however many challenges. And with Troyzan, Sarah said like he would be the mediator because Sarah and Brad are both pretty fiery personalities. If you think about it, they got mad at each other a lot, and Troyzan would be the one who would smooth it over.
Yeah. So Zeke went out when they thought Troyzan was going to go out. And then next on this boot list was Malcolm. And again, I can't figure this out because they have like the super buff guys going like all the way to the end, but then they put Malcolm, who's like relatively strong, like in the middle of the pack. And so one thing was Troyzan and Malcolm both like came in, they had the same number of points that I used for the system. Mm-hmm. But the reason why Malcolm theoretically got booted after, based on this boot list, was because one person thought that he was going to win. And for Malcolm, I thought it was really interesting because he got people who thought he was going to be in first, second, and third, and then 11th, 16th, 17th, and 14th. So, like,
I think coming into this season, a lot of people thought Malcolm was going to win. I think 3 episodes in, a lot of people thought Malcolm was going to win. I know I thought he had a really good chance, and I'm really, really glad I didn't pick him because I didn't want to, because that would have been, I don't think it would have been a complete embarrassment because I don't think anyone saw that coming, and I don't think that's a normal situation.
Yeah.
But it just would have been a little bit tragic.
Yeah, or a lot of it tragic.
It's interesting how the people who came out of Karamoan, both of them, so many people picked them to win.
I feel like it's just because, like, you could see that both of them were, like, working on making their game better. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's one of the things where, like, there are some Survivor players, like we've talked about, who, like, their games stay the same. And, like, you saw both Malcolm and Andrea, like, changing their games from their first season to their second season. So, I feel
Malcolm, yeah, Malcolm is really the whole package. He's very strategic, very charming, and he can win challenges. And we're definitely going to see him a 4th time. Hopefully it's in a couple years again, so all the Malcolm hype calms down. Malcolm is 100 times better than Joe. I think I probably said that last time we talked about him, but
Joe is discount Malcolm.
hey!
Yeah.
I don't like Joe. I probably made a lot of people angry, but Malcolm is better than Joe. I don't think that's that
unpopular
unpopular.
opinion.
I don't even think that's that unpopular.
I don't know.
I think probably the people who like Malcolm also, people like Joe also like Malcolm.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on.
Sierra Dawn Thomas got out when they thought that Malcolm was going to go out.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ozzy got put in the next slot, which I guess kind of makes sense since he and Malcolm
Are similar.
I hesitate to say that just because, yeah, it's the hair. I hesitate to say that just because Ozzy lacks a lot of the strategic and social game that Malcolm has. So,
yeah, Ozzy. I don't think Ozzy really understands how much the game has changed and how to win this game in the current era. And he was close to winning, obviously, in, I guess, 13, that was Cook Islands. But that was like 10 years ago. Survivor has changed so much since then that what you did in Cook Islands won't work. Like, I think Yule could come back and decently win because he did a good job in Cook Islands and he did some very strategic things. Yes, he had that idol, but Tony did too. And we say Tony was a great player. I don't know. I just thought of that. That doesn't have anything to do with anything we were talking about. But yeah, still not a fan of Ozzy. Was not a fan of how much he was hyping Brad at that final tribal. His reunion show thing was hilarious. I like how Ozzy was the one to go all serious. But like, I don't ever want to see him play again. I don't think we needed to see him play this time. It's fine because like he's a legend, and like if we're bringing back a couple legends, I'm fine with Ozzy. He's not offensive in any way to me.
Yeah, and he said that he would play for a 5th time, but
I don't think production wants him.
I pray that doesn't happen. Like I feel like they would only do that if like they had no one else that they could do.
But I feel like if there was like a Legends, like a real Legends season, that maybe it would make sense.
Maybe.
Malcolm was better. I think unless we ever talk about Jay, my opinion on these long hair guys is always going to be Malcolm was better, and it probably still is even with Jay.
Yeah.
Malcolm's just the best that archetype is ever going to get.
And then Andrea went out when they thought that Ozzy was going to go out. And then another one on this boot list that just baffles me is Ty. And I was like, why do people think this skinny little Asian man is going to get super far in the game of Survivor?
They weren't wrong. This guy has I think currently, it's different because people have played different amounts of times, but he holds the best returning player average at the moment because of Sandra going out so early. Because if you think about the other 2-time finalists, Amanda went out 9th or so in Heroes versus Villains. Russell obviously went pre-merge. Spencer and Keith are also both really high on those lists. I think. Is it weird to think of Keith and Ty in like the same? They're not really similar players at all, but they're both never gonna really win, but also are really likely to do well every time they play.
I think that makes sense. Like the reasons why they're both doing it differently is because, or why they both do it are different reasons, but I feel like it's a valid statement to say like they both are going to do well but never win.
I mean, Keith might win. I don't actually know.
I don't know. I'm not sure if they'll ever bring Keith back, but that's one of the things where I feel like Ty doesn't look like a challenge piece. And then, yeah.
Neither is Keith, though. Honestly, Keith won a lot of challenges.
That's true. So, Ty and Keith, the same person? Let us know in the comments.
That was a strange tangent. I don't know how I came up with that.
Yeah.
Dude, I would like Keith Nail so much more as Sam Mondelser rewatch when I wasn't worried he was going to beat Natalie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Ty did a really admirable job this game, and Ty's a little bit of a messy player, and he's always going to be a messy player. Also, I don't think he changed his game that much, but he did really well for himself.
Yeah, I think he did a little bit better as far as the head versus heart thing, but I think that's one of those things where I don't think he'll ever get over it all the way, and that's like one of those things you need to be able to do in Survivor.
And I think that's why I think it's really interesting that Aubrey and Ty have placed so close to each other 2 times now. I just really find it intriguing. I like watching duos that like almost go to the end together twice. And I think Aubrey and Ty are like the reverse Spencer and Tasha in a way. In that, So if you think about it, Spencer and Tasha almost made Final Tribal their first time and made Final Tribal together their second time. Aubrey and Ty made Final Tribal together on their first time and then almost made it on their second time. So I don't think like they're similar at all as characters, but they're kind of similar placements in the end.
They have similar arcs.
Yeah, I think, and they always, all those characters always had a little bit of an underdog arc. Maybe not Spencer and Tasha in Second Chances as much, but yeah, I think Ty is always going to have a little bit of an underdog arc because he just doesn't, you don't look at him and think he's going to be good at Survivor.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But
that's my opinion on Ty.
Yeah. And Michaela went out where they thought that Ty was going to go out, which is funny because Michaela was the next person on this boot list. And I thought this was really interesting because Michaela, I think, was the only girl that they overestimated her capabilities.
By only one spot, though.
Yeah.
Or they were pretty spot on. I am so happy for Michaela. She did so well. I don't know if she really changed her game all that much, but I knew she had it in her to make a deep run into the game, and I think I'm glad she did. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I feel like one of those things where, like, part of it is the people you're playing against, and, like, the people that Michaela was playing against her first time were kind of paranoid. Like, it was their first time playing Survivor, so they were all, like, kind of jumpy, I feel like, and really making sure that they like got out the big threats or whatever. And so I thought that was
and she played way too hard in challenges her first time, and she put such a big target on her back that then like right before the merge, Jay and Will were like, we can't let her make it. Because if you think about that season, she was by far like nobody won an overwhelming amount of those challenges.
Yeah.
Michaela could have. And I'm really, really, really surprised she didn't win any challenges this season. I'm like actually shocked she didn't win any individual immunities, and I really wanted her to.
I think that's because like a lot of the individual immunities like involve like kind of puzzle-ish aspects.
And I think Michaela honestly reminds me a little bit of Stephanie LaGrossa in that their strengths play really well in the tribal challenges, but not super well in the individual ones.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, I think Steph has only won like one immunity ever.
Huh.
I think, if I remember right, she won a challenge in Guatemala. I think it was like Final 5, but I don't remember.
Be able to recall that off the top of my head.
Yeah, Guatemala was like the first season I saw, so I have a lot of Guatemala knowledge in my head just because it was obviously the season that set me into Survivor. And it was a good season. People don't like it. We don't have to talk about Guatemala though.
Yeah.
That's a conversation for another day.
Also, one of the things about Michaela is people were talking in the live chat, like, if you want to see Michaela again, you'd probably want to see Michaela again, like, in a couple years after she's had time to, like, work on her whole emotions on the face thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she, I think, will be really good in a couple of years. I'm really excited because I think she'll come back. I think she wants to come back. I think she has something to prove still.
Yeah. And I feel like it would be really interesting to see Michaela, like, make it to the final, like, tribal council. If only to see, like, all of the sass that she would throw. or all of the shade she would throw and sass she would give. Can't mix up those expressions.
Yes.
Like to the jurors who like tried to tell her she hadn't played a good game, like she would slay.
I think what Suri said about Michaela reminding her of herself, a younger Suri, is really interesting because we never saw Suri at Michaela's age. I think Suri was something like 34 when she played the game for the first time, so she already had that life experience and she was more mature, whereas Michaela, I don't remember how old she is. She's in her 20s, I know. But she just doesn't have a lot of life experience and doesn't really know how to hold her temper in. And I don't think that was ultimately what cost her. I think what cost her was her tie to Suri and just that whole mess. I think she might have made it further if Suri hadn't messed that up.
Yeah. And I think Suri like didn't try to mess it up either. Like
Suri tried her best. Suri had a good idea. If it had worked, if she had been able to do that, it would have just gone into Suri's. Like, there was a couple moves Suri tried to pull it off. If she had pulled them off, they would have made her an all-time great. I mean, she's an all-time great, but they would have just added to the this long list that's like the Courtney blindside and the Eric blindside and the Ozzy blindside and like just a bunch of blindsides. I really like Suri. I think we've made that clear, but she's such a good strategic player.
Yeah. And funnily enough, Suri got voted out where they thought Michaela was going to get voted out. And then this next one was Sierra Easton, and she had the same amount of points as Michaela, but
they way overestimated her.
Yeah, but the reason why Sierra got ahead of Michaela in this boot list was because two people thought that she was going to come in second place, and the highest place that Michaela received was fourth. So I think it's really interesting because, like, I feel like Sierra, if this was a boot list for second chances, this would be like a great place to put Sierra, I feel like, just because
she didn't do super well in second chances.
She got deeper in second chances than she did in this game.
Obviously, but she also got deeper in Blood versus Water than she did in second chances.
Yeah, but I feel like Blood versus Water is a whole new ball game when you come to like predicting boot lists, just because of the whole connectedness bit.
I want another Blood versus Water season with newbies. That was San Juan del Sur was probably like that. This unpopular opinion, San Juan del Sur is probably, I guess it would be probably third or fourth best. I guess it's not super unpopular, but like after Kagayan is obviously incredible. I love Korong, and I really, really like Millennials versus Gen X. But then San Juan del Sur is right there too.
Yeah. But we already talked about Sierra, I feel like, at the beginning when we were talking about why she came in 20th place. So
yeah, I think we've talked enough about her. Obviously, she played too hard, too fast. I think second chances, they just hit the ground running in it.
And it was like a group consensus that they were going to hit the ground running. I feel like it's one of those things where, like, if everyone in Game Changers had started out by balling hard, I feel like Sierra would have been fine. But like,
she just doesn't know how to slow down,
and she also doesn't know how to like read what other people are doing. I feel like, because if you're the only one who's going hard, that's when you start becoming a target.
Oh yeah. Was she on the tribe that lost a lot at the beginning of second chances, or was she on the other tribe?
I honestly have no clue.
I was like, that was the season. Nah, I don't know. I don't really care.
Nice.
I just thought of that.
Anyways, we already talked about Sierra, and then Sandra is their fourth place in this first impressions boot list. And like Sandra. I said, a lot of this had to do with the fact that she was wearing her military hat in her picture that we chose. And I thought it was interesting because, like, Sandra, people thought she was going to do, like, pretty well. But then there was one person who randomly put her at 18th. And I was like...
Yeah, that's bizarre. I did not expect that. What list was this? I'm so confused. And the person who put her 18th, I'm so confused. There's two 11s.
Oh, this person might have messed up, I feel like. There was
Oh
some
well,
person who like did it wrong.
that's fine.
But in
See,
any case,
Sandra, I think she did the best she could have done. There was nothing she could have done about when she went out. Did you know they actually threw the challenge to get rid of her?
I did not
That's a
know
fun
that.
fact. That's confirmed by both Sarah and Zeke. That it was Ozzy's idea to throw the challenge to get her out.
Ozzy. You see, I feel like
Ozzy.
it worked out well, but like
And
you
also, I
don't
think they.
throw challenges. That's like Survivor rule number 1.
But also, I'm pretty sure they would have lost regardless. Because the other
Yeah.
tribe had a lot more, like, I don't remember what challenge that was. I think they might have stood a shot at the puzzle. Because Zeke is so good at puzzles. Yeah, but I think
I guess it's better to say that you threw a challenge than to just be like, oh yeah, we lost.
I get Sandra really proved herself. Like, she did a great. I love her in Heroes vs. Villains, and I love Pearl Islands, and I love her in Pearl Islands. But like, she came out to play this time, and she knew which way the game was going, and she shut up and didn't talk a lot early. But then when she needed to get everyone behind getting rid of Tony, she did. The sugar thing was the best television I have seen in such a long time. It was so funny.
I just think it's really interesting because like Sandra's entire game the first 2 times was like flying under the radar. But once she knew that she had to game to stay in, she was like all for it.
Yeah, I think, and I honestly think we'll see her a 4th time, even if it's like just for all winners. And yeah.
Yeah.
So I wish I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to say about Sandra. I don't really think there was. I'm just kind of getting burned out, but that's okay.
Yeah, this is really long, so
yeah, we're talking about a lot, and we still have to get to a couple. I feel like the end is going to be kind of anticlimactic.
yeah. So this was another one that baffled me.
Yeah,
that the person who came in 3rd place was Zeke, and I was like, Oh, and Ty got out when they thought Sandra was gonna get out.
Yeah.
But Zeke, I was kind of like,
okay.
I can't figure out how they got to this, but and I don't really know.
I honestly can't either because he doesn't like.
In the breakdown of the like individual scores, no one puts him like super high, but no one puts him super low either. And I feel like part of the thing is a lot of people were really divided when it came to certain players, where there are people who had them as like number 1, but then also people who had them as like number 20. And so it's like,
that's fair.
It was better for Zeke, like in the way we scored this, to have a lot of people consistently think that he was okay than to have people think that he was super great and then super bad.
I think Zeke is another one. I don't think playing back-to-back is really hard because it's really hard to learn from your game playing back-to-back. And like I listen to Zeke on Rob has a podcast too. I like to listen to the long interviews they do with all the players, but he just didn't sound like this was a good season for him. Obviously, he had a traumatic experience. That was not, and I think even though he didn't want that to change the way he played, from what he was saying, it sounded like it did, and it had like it's gonna change things.
I feel like also like the way Zeke was playing was not a good way to play in this game. I don't feel like.
Yeah, I think that you had to be subtle in when you were flipping. And Sarah was really good at being subtle, and Zeke was just not. Subtle is not a word that Zeke knows. And I am a very big Zeke supporter. I'm like a lot bigger of Zeke supporter than other people are. But like I understand the mistakes he made. And I think that this game, which was very much played along the lines was so much different than Millennials versus Gen X, where people were moving back and forth all the time. And I think that Millennials versus Gen X is another season that people just agreed right out the gate to play hard because there were so many fans on that season.
Yeah. And then also just like I feel like when you're a new player playing the game, you feel like you have to make a name for yourself.
Yeah, and I feel like Zeke also felt like he had something to prove, and I think he enjoys playing the game like he did, and he knows it might not be the best game each time, but I think he knew he wasn't going to be able to win after what happened with Varner, and I think he just wanted to play hard and have a good time because from what I heard, it sounded like he wasn't having a good time before if he wasn't like playing, he wasn't enjoying himself. Like he just loves to play the game hard. And that's fine. I think if he had played his first season 2 or 3 years ago and he could have been on second chances, that would have gone really well for him.
Yeah.
But it just didn't here.
Yeah. And that's like kind of a shame, but also like if you can only have a good time playing Survivor one way, then like
is it really like yeah.
The game's fault if you don't enjoy it because you only like playing one way.
Yeah. I guess that's fair.
I don't know. But anyways, Troyzan came in the place that they thought that Zeke was going to come in. And then next up was one of the other people that they got correct in placement, and that is Brad Culpepper. And so I guess I've been talking or like hinting at this like throughout the entire podcast, but like the people who did really well in this are the people who are like super buff, meaty guys. And so Tony was the person who came in first place. And like they're both kind of like really big guys, and we talked about how people overstate the physical importance in this game and stuff. So
yeah, I think it's interesting how people were right on Brad. A little bit mad about it because we were also wrong on Brad.
Yeah.
And like complete like people who had no idea what Survivor was. Well, they knew what it was kind of, but didn't know how it was played, didn't know any of these players got Brad more right than we did. And I think it was something that none of us really thought about. Everyone dismissed Brad right away, like, oh, because he had in Blood versus Water, we saw a lot of Brad mistakes. We didn't see a lot of things Brad did right. And I know there were things that he did right. He made it, like, he was like fourth voted out, but like he made it that far. Right, he would have been up first. I guess. I don't know if that's accurate. But I think we got to see a lot more of like what a Brad game looks, and I think obviously after a certain point he was really the only one who was super physically fit and like able to win the challenges. Just kind of sad and unfortunate.
And I guess like this entire boot list proved to me that like what we were talking about earlier, where physicality isn't everything in Survivor anymore. And I just think that's so interesting because like when I talk to people about it, I'm like, oh, it's a game where you have to survive on an island for 39 days. And people are automatically like, how do people do that? They must lose so much weight. And I'm like, yeah, they do.
They do.
What people don't seem to understand is that like the lack of food and the weight loss affects like the big guys first. Because like you see like Joe passed out in Cambodia because like he wasn't getting enough glucose, and like muscles consume a lot of energy when you're using them. And so
yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, I don't think there's much to say about Brad's game. He did better. I don't think he was a complete waste of a spot. I think he did a good job. He proved himself. Whatever. Fine. It's hilarious that he has the same exact record as Monica.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're aware of that, but he actually has played the same amount of days as Monica.
Now I'm aware of it.
It's really funny. It's really great. But I was like, it would have been really tragic if Brad had won, because Monica did Survivor for it to be her thing, and for to have Brad to come back and to win when she never won, that would have just been really, really sad.
Yeah.
Because as much as I give Monica, like, Monica Culpepper is not a great Survivor player, but she's a really nice person. I think, was it Neat Lady? I forget. I think it's like Neat Lady is the thing she would say. I don't remember, but she's great. I know. It's funny because my cousins are from Tampa and the Culpeppers are from Tampa. So they'll like Snapchat me pictures of Brad Culpepper's law billboards. and it's really hilarious. But
yeah, I just feel like all in all, Brad did really well. But then Tony, who came in first place, like it wasn't that he played a bad game. It was that Sandra like had it out for him, and like again, he was like Sierra,
to be
where
fair, he had it out for Sandra too.
yeah, it was like Sierra, where he didn't know how to like chill out.
I mean, Tony will never chill out. That's just the way Tony plays the game. He's not going to do well in a season where you have to sit and chill out. And that's what I feel like from hearing a lot of these people, that's what the early game was, just sitting and waiting and then deciding what you wanted to happen, I guess. There was a lot of like group think and it was just a pretty easy majority and, oh, we're going to vote this person and that person. And it never really got interesting until Sarah started changing things up. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think it's interesting because, like, we say it didn't get interesting until people started making moves, but we're also criticizing the people for making moves. So it's like, it's paradoxical.
Let's be fair. I don't really criticize Sarah for making any of the moves she did.
We criticize both Sierra and Tony for trying to make big moves in the beginning.
But I think you have to know what direction the game's going. In some games, you do make big moves right away. Like, I guess second chances is a good idea, a good concept of that. And I think this game you didn't. Like, it wasn't a game where you just sat and watched and tried to form alliances right away, which is a lot different.
Yeah.
It's just the way things shake out, really.
I feel like that's a great note to, like, end on. That's just the way things shake out. Yeah.
So, none of us were right.
No one's ever gonna be right about Survivor, am I right?
No. My winner picks are always awful. They're actually not always awful. I think I picked Carolyn maybe to win Worlds Apart. That wasn't awful.
Yeah.
I picked Jay to win last season. I might have picked Jeremy. I think I picked a girl and a guy for Cambodia, and I picked Monica and Jeremy. Like, I was really rooting. I wasn't rooting for Monica, but I had this feeling Amber won Survivor. Parvati won. Well, Parvati did good her second time, but like, did well. I'm sorry. You know the type of girls who always do well, and I just picked Monica instead of Wentworth by accident. I should have picked Wentworth, but I was going to pick two people from the same season.
I think it was interesting because, like, we as fans of the show didn't actually do that much better than the people who kind of just picked out of a hat, I feel like. So I thought that was an interesting way to keep humble in Survivor.
Yeah, and I think it is really different, the biases everyone comes into, because the people who have never seen it before, concept in their head of what Survivor is and what's important to win Survivor, and it might be ill-founded, whereas we come in with the bias of seeing those, and for the people who didn't win, seeing their mistakes, and seeing mostly their mistakes. Although, did we see Aubrey's mistakes?
Yeah, we don't talk about Aubrey being flawed because she is perfect. And that's what my bias is.
Aubrey is perfect. That is, but I was just saying, like, her game, that editing was strange.
Yeah, thank you all for liking, commenting, and subscribing. We really love doing this sort of thing. And if you guys enjoyed this, let us know in the comments below, because we might do a similar, like, first impressions boot list for the next season, perhaps. Maybe.
It'll be different because it'll be our first impressions too.
Yeah.
Because we won't know who these players are. Yeah, thanks so much for having me again. I had a really good time again.
Yeah, and
I'm sorry I talked so. This went forever long. I'm sorry I talked so much.
Yeah, blame Emily for how long this is. Let her know that she should watch the podcast, even if they're super long.
Fine, I'll watch your podcasts. I have time.
But
to our help like every day.
Yeah. So next week, Rachel and I will be back, and we're going to be talking about something interesting that we have yet to decide, but it's going to be interesting. So
that sounds good.
Then, bye.